Hi everybody, it's Terry Ryder from Hotspotting. Recently I spoke at an event in Sydney which was hosted by Investorist, highlighting some of the upcoming opportunities for investment in different parts of Australia. And it was notable that there were a number of businesses based in Perth who were there at the Sydney event. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of this. Sydney businesses associated with the real estate industry are trying to alert real estate investors in the East Coast cities, particularly in Sydney and Melbourne, to the opportunities that are coming up in Perth. And certainly I believe that, and I've often said that Perth to us is a city of opportunity because after 4 years of price decline created by a downturn in the Western Australian economy, that market has attractive pricing. And there's growing evidence that the market has moved through the bottom of the downturn and is now in a recovery mode. So a good time to be considering buying in Perth. And certainly there were a number of businesses at the Sydney event hosted by Investorist trying to alert Sydney investors of the opportunities in Perth. And it's a particular opportunity because many people who own real estate in Sydney and Melbourne have a lot of equity after the last 4 or 5 years of strong growth, but they are aware that the boom is over in those cities, so they're looking for other places to invest. They're asking the question, where next? And one of the potential answers to that question is the Perth property market. One of the businesses there, Blackburn, which is a development company very active in the Perth market, had a publication, 10 Reasons Perth Should Be Your Next Investment. I thought it was interesting because many of the points they highlight are points that we at Hotspotting have been highlighting as well. They talk about the affordable pricing in Perth, and certainly after several years of price decline, the pricing there is attractive, particularly compared to Sydney and Melbourne. They talked about population growth. Perth historically has been a very strong population growth city. That dissipated a little bit with the end of the resources investment boom, but there's evidence it's now starting to come back. They talk about employment growth in the last 12 months. Western Australia is now creating jobs again in large numbers, and I expect that to continue, partly because the resources sector is coming back strongly. We're now seeing major resources company like BHP, Billiton, like Rio Tinto, like Fortescue Metals, announcing multi-billion-dollar projects, primarily in the iron ore sector, but also there's the big push in the lithium sector as well. So lots of jobs now being created in Western Australia. Again, that's very significant for the economy, which underpins the property market in the capital city, Perth. They talked about an increase in consumer confidence, which has been charted by various research entities. Talked about spending on infrastructure, a very important factor. One of the things that has driven Sydney's recent boom has been very, very high levels of spending on infrastructure. Is always something to look for, I think, as investors. Cities with big spending on infrastructure tend to have growing economies, and out of that growth, property markets. Talked about this publication by Blackburn, the development company out of Perth, talked also about stronger rental yields. Vacancies have been high in Perth, but they're now coming down. And there's growing evidence that the rental market is strengthening. With the lower vacancies, there's now some evidence that rents are growing again. They also talked in this report about increasing transaction volume, sales activity in the Perth market. We at Hotspotting have charted that. There's actually been a steady quarter-by-quarter increase over the past 12 or 18 months that we've noticed. It's a very, very distinct pattern. And what we know to be true is then when sales volumes rise steadily quarter after quarter, we're going to see eventually prices growing again. They talked about the recovery in the resources sector, which is something that I'm very aware of and think is very significant, firstly for the Western Australian economy, and out of that for the Perth property market. Also note there was an article in one of the real estate magazines which said premium suburbs leading the charge for the Perth market. That's something we've also noted at Hotspotting with our recent research. Generally speaking, across the board, there hasn't been a great deal of evidence yet of rising prices in the Perth market. There certainly is a lot of evidence of rising sales activity, but it does take time for that to translate into higher prices. But the one market, the sub-market that we have seen higher prices, and it's been quite significant, and that's in the top end of the market, the $1 million suburbs. And I think that's significant because most real estate boom cycles in our individual cities start at the top end of the market, and gradually they ripple out from the inner ring suburbs to the middle ring and latterly to the outer ring. We saw that in Sydney, we saw that in Melbourne, and now I think we'll be seeing the beginnings of a cycle, an upcycle in Perth, with significant rises in prices in the top end. And that's because when the economy improves, and the first people to notice are the people at the wealthy end of town, the people who own businesses, the people who earn the big money, and so they start to pay a little bit more for real estate, and we're seeing that in Perth. So I think, generally speaking, good prospects coming up for those who take an interest and see the opportunities in the Perth property market moving forward. Just a reminder that there's some major regal events coming up this week with my live broadcasts on Facebook. Tomorrow night, Tuesday night, I always have Hotspot of the Week, and that's happening tomorrow, Tuesday evening. And on Wednesday evening, my monthly live Q&A, question and answer. That's your opportunity to throw your questions at me, and I'll answer them as best I can live via this medium. So both Tuesday night with Hotspot of the Week and Wednesday night with live Q&A, those events will be happening at 7:30 p.m. in the eastern states, 7 p.m. in the middle states, and 5:30 p.m. in Western Australia. So don't miss those opportunities to see the areas that I rate tomorrow night, and on Wednesday evening, the opportunity to ask any questions you might have about real estate. What I do find is most people want to ask questions about locations, and I'm happy with that. You're free to ask any questions at all that relate to the residential property market, but most people want to know what I think about certain locations that are of interest to them. So feel free. Join us tomorrow night for Hotspot of the Week, Wednesday night for the live Q&A. That's it for now. Terry Ryder from hotspotting.com.au signing off. Speak to you again soon.